What's going on, my people? And welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Marcus McCoy. I'm your host, Marcus McCoy. Today, we're going to bring you an awesome show. I'm honored to have this special guest. For me, it's full circle. It's going to be a father and son conversation with none other than my father, Larry McCoy. I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Could you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, before we go into that, I just wonder why you got a nice background, and I'm just looking at a picture on the wall, and so we'll talk about that after the show. But my name is Larry McCoy. I was, as Marcus said, I'm his dad, and I'm proud to be on his show. Very proud of his accomplishment. I was born in a small town in the Mississippi Delta, and Stevie Wonder put it this way. The boy is born in hard time, Mississippi, surrounded by 2 4 walls that were not pretty. And so I was born in the middle of a cotton field, surrounded by boll weevils, spiders, flies, and all kind of insects. And so most folks consider it to be a humble background, but for a long time I didn't know I was poor. Because so many black folks lived in same or similar conditions.
Okay. Now, along that same line, since you talked about it, how was your childhood? How were things growing up for you as a child?
Well, initially, I thought I lived an idyllic life. I would every Sunday, my family and I would go to church. After church, we'd go to my grandmother's house. And they were pretty well to do. We chased chickens and drank buttermilk, and they made soap, and I just had a lot of fun. But all that changed when I was about 5 years old, when my father suddenly disappeared from my life and our house. And of course, everything changed then for the worse.
In what way would you say it changed for the worse?
Well, I was a daddy's boy, and I thought my daddy was the best looking, biggest, strongest man in the world. And when he disappeared without warning, I was left feeling almost, if I could use the term, naked, defenseless, because my protection was gone. And at that time, grown folk, adults believed in keeping outdoor businesses to themselves, so they didn't tell children a lot about what was going on in the outdoor world. So nobody would tell me what happened to my dad. They just said he left. And so for the next 2 or 3 years, I made it my business to try to look for him as best I could. But I was lonesome, I was worried, and I didn't have a lot of answers. And so when I got to be about 9 years old, my world changed again, because my mama told me I was tall for a 9-year-old, and that I needed to go to the cotton field with the adults, because we needed $3 a day. And so I found myself away from my playmates and working with adults from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening, in the afternoon in the hot sun, 10 hours a day for $3 a day. And I was the only kid out there. And so that threw me into a world that bewildered me. I did not like it. I was not ready for it, and it made me ponder and about God and talk to Him and wonder whether or not He was righteous in what was happening to me. When you're out in the cotton field and you're a kid, cotton grows almost over your head, so you have a lot of time to think and wonder, because you couldn't involve yourself in the grown folk conversations. Absolutely. So not only lonesome, but it was hard work.
So, for me, obviously, you know how my childhood was. You're my dad, but I'm just going, give a little brief.
You're idyllic.
Yeah. I'm going to give a little. Hey, it's not too late to take that paternity test we talked about.
Hey, let me tell you something. After this, we going to take it.
It could be back on board today.
I'm going to swab you.
Swab everything.
But I don't know. Now that you got this show, let's hold on for a little while.
Oh, you gonna claim it now, right?
I'm not saying claim it.
That's how we do it.
Let's wait and see what the ratings are about. Now you can claim.
All right. So if they low, swab is coming.
Okay. Hey, I'm ready.
So my childhood, obviously, I grew up with both of my parents. Um, I can't really complain because I feel like I had a good childhood. However, I feel like coming from Jackson, Mississippi, and maybe this probably is a larger problem. Maybe all of Mississippi. I mean, I didn't live in all of Mississippi, so I can only speak to Jackson. I think kids they grow up. Your parents try to shelter you from seeing, being around certain stuff, certain environments, right? But the way
Mhm.
Jackson is, I feel like no matter how much your parents do for you, you're still gonna see some of those things because it's just so prevalent in the city,
Yeah.
like crime, poverty, homelessness, gangs, and that type of stuff. So I also feel like having those experience, seeing that when I was, younger, it made me, and for lack of better terms, it made me very street smart. And then I wasn't naive to a lot of different things. Now I don't think a kid should grow up, being able to see some of the things. However, some of those hard lessons I had to learn, was basically scoped me and molded me into, who I am today. So I always, people say if you can go back and change something, I wouldn't go change anything about my life because everything that's happened is for a reason. Whether it was good, bad, right, wrong, or different, there's a lesson to be learned in all of it. So where would you say you get your drive from, like the drive to be successful and the things you want to do and the things you have accomplished in life?
Well, on the plantations where I lived, everybody was required to work. Even the elderly had to get out there and carry a sack to pick some cotton. If they couldn't pick the 5 pounds, they had to be out there, uh, chop cotton or whatever. So since everybody worked, if you didn't really work hard, you were considered to be lazy. Just regular work was not good enough. And so I think I got most of my drive from my mother because my mother, although she was a short woman, about 5'2", 5 feet 2 inches, my mother could pick more cotton than anybody that the folks on the plantation had ever seen. My mama could pick 500 pounds of cotton a day. When at the state penitentiary, they were only requiring that they pick 300, and she picked 5. And I had a sister named Lucille who's 10 years older. Lucille could pick 4 or 5. And so my mama always liked to joke that she said she picked cotton on Saturday, had me on Sunday, and went back to the field on Monday. So she had a tremendous amount of drive and did not believe in taking no for an answer. And so that's the way I grew up among people like that. But I knew a lot of hardworking people. But of all of them, my mother and my sister worked harder than anybody else, in my opinion.
So for me, obviously, I'm gonna say I got it from both of my parents. But me and you, we talked about this before. I do feel like I get a lot of my drive from you. Also feel like I get a lot of my drive from just the way I grew up. You know how
Yeah.
Mississippi is. We got the highest obesity rate. We got the lowest education rate. And you grow up hearing all these different things, and people kind of put you in a box and they lump you along with everybody else. And I just felt like, I want to do better for myself. I'm big at proving the naysayers wrong. You tell me I
Mm-hmm.
can't do something, and I'm gonna find 10,000 different ways to do it. Also, we both talked about I think we're never satisfied, right? So we don't
Right.
rest on our laurels. So because we're
Right.
never satisfied, you're looking for you might accomplish something, and then you're looking for, hey, what's this next thing I'm gonna do? I always appreciate how even at the whole entire time I've been here on this earth, I've got to see you hustle and work and do different things and get in different ventures, even at this age right here. Oh, make sure I gotta say this. Those who don't know, my dad turned 70 years old last week. So I'm gonna say publicly happy birthday again, even though I think I told you like 7,000 times already. But happy
I think a
birthday.
mistake was made on my birth certificate. I think I'm 36. I think, and so we just say 66.
I was gonna say if you say 36, then did I look? Then we'd be brothers. I'd be older. Hey, I'd be older than you to be the younger brother.
Okay, 40. Okay, 46. Okay, let's just.
40. Oh, oh,
But
oh,
you know
man.
what? Thank you for that, and I am blessed to have got him, as the folks said, my three score and 10. And I want three score and 10, an additional three score and 10. Because I still have a lot of things I want to do.
Absolutely. It's definitely a blessing, for anybody to, reach this age, live each day. So definitely glad to see it, glad to be a part of it. Science on the same token, we talked about drive, right? So I brought this here because I want you guys to know my dad has, this is one of his books, this is the book in that we're gonna specifically talk about today, titled Fatherless. So could you tell us about the book and tell the listeners, where they can go purchase it or read?
Okay. This book originated out of my desire to allow you all, my children, to know me a little bit better. There are always a lot of things y'all never gonna know about me. But I think too often as Black parents, we allow our children to think that we were fully formed when they saw us,
Mm-hmm.
and that we didn't make any mistakes. We didn't cry. We didn't do anything that was illegal or improper. And I think they get a false impression of us. And I think we have to be real. And I didn't think that you all could understand me fully until you understood how I was as a child. Because you wouldn't have a way of knowing it unless I sat down and told you about it, told you about my fears, my anger, some of the mistakes I made. So this book it's almost an open letter to you all. But in the meantime, while I was doing it, writing the book, I thought it'd also be a good chance to maybe write a note to fathers who abandon their children, particularly the boys. I don't know what it's like to be a girl. And I've talked to my sister about it. She says I need to do a sequel. But I know that, I read a book a while back that says men cry in the dark. And too often we expect to be strong and emotionless until it's time for somebody to want us to be another way. And I think too often we don't get a chance to fully express our emotions. And so I started off writing this book to let you all know some of my times, as a kid, and some of my fears, and some of my worries, and so those are some of the things that formed me to be who I am today, and let you know about some of my failures and some of my accomplishments and who I relied on. And it's also a book that talks about some of the enduring characters that I met, that helped me along the way. Back in the Delta, when I was growing up, I think there was one family on the plantation that had a television. And the television went off the air at 10 o'clock. You worked until 6 o'clock. So if you got home, you took a bath, you ate about 8:30, you could watch TV. But by 10 o'clock, it was off the air. So you didn't see a lot. And so a lot of programming. And so we worked a lot. And people told stories. People entertained each other by telling jokes and visiting each other, and people who were in my area were related to each other. And so I was around a huge number of storytellers, and I happen to remember a lot of those stories, and I was intrigued by them. And that's the way I write, as a storyteller.
So we can both agree that having a father in a young boy's life, a daughter too, young woman too, but we're specifically talking about in a young boy's life is very important. So for me, I would say there's a lot of reasons why I think it's important. I mean, first and foremost, I think you touched on it where you said, you couldn't teach your daughter how to be a woman. Now, I think a lot of, I got, different friends, and a lot of them feel like, a woman can do versus, do the father and the mother's job at the same time. And a lot of them do have to do that job, unfortunately. But I do feel like there are certain things that only a man can teach another young man growing up. And like I said, the things I got from you, I remember I told this story a while ago, but for those that you don't know, my dad was my high school basketball coach, right? I hated him.
One of the most terrible times in my life.
I'm sure it was. Well, that's something we could agree on. It was mine too. And now I remember used to push me real hard. I always felt like I was getting more than everybody else. I had to run an extra suicide or extra lap and that type of stuff. But that also in high school, that started developing my drive too. Is when I didn't think I could push through certain things, I was able to do it. And you just always realizing that you got that different gear that you can snap into at any time. And then just looking at the model of what a man should look like for his family, for his siblings, all that type of stuff. I tell you this a lot, but and you don't really see people say this in reverse from a child aspect. But I'm extremely proud of you and the things you've been able to accomplish, the stuff you continue to do, and for everybody else listening too, right? Because I want this to be known, right? So he's crazy, right? So I tell my friends story about you, and I swear they think I'm not telling the truth when I say it. But look,
and you're probably not.
but the way I am, being who I am, being comfortable in my own skin, it's a big part of my upbringing with my dad. My dad always says that you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and you got to be happy with the person you are. You can't let other people dictate your own opinion of yourself. Nobody's gonna live your life for you. Nobody's gonna walk your walk for you. So, I just want to kind of throw that out there because it may be somebody, battling internally with that type of struggle, trying to appease somebody else and being something they're not, just so they can be accepted or fitting in. But
Amen.
But what do you feel like? I mean, I know you kind of touched on it, but what do you feel like the significance is of having a father in a young male's life? Because I'm gonna make this statement and I'm gonna turn it over to you. I feel like Black fathers are often overlooked and underappreciated.
Amen again. Well, I can speak from a personal perspective, and I can speak from a historical perspective. As I said, I was a daddy's child, and the main thing my daddy gave me was a sense of security. And in young children, even in adults, a sense of security is very important. And my daddy provided a lot of other things, but as soon as he disappeared from my life, I felt like my security blanket was gone. And it made me view the world differently. It became scary and big and dark and ominous. And so that was the immediate feeling I had after my dad left. Now, as I got older, I saw some other kids that had dads, and I got to experience a little bit of their lives and what it was like to have dads from looking from the outside. And then I moved to neighborhoods where 90% of the kids were like me. So many kids, at least I had the advantage of knowing who my dad was. I grew up with a lot of kids that didn't have any idea who their dads were. So a guy would come to town from one of these small towns, he had a little money, and he had been associated with their mother. Some of these guys would say, well, I guess that may be my dad. And so some guys had 3 or 4 different men coming in and out of their lives as pseudo dads. For me, my dad showed back up when I was 12, I think. And also in retrospect, I'm glad he came back. At that time, I hated it because I had already decided that I could take care of myself. I didn't need a stepdad. I was formulating my plan to get through life, first as a kid and then as an adult. And I thought I was doing pretty good. And then my dad showed back up and says, "Hey, I'm your dad." And he told me why he left. And he wants to be my dad again. So, I rebelled against that. We had an ongoing war for about 4 or 5 years, where he was trying to be my dad, and I was trying to say, I don't need a dad. You're too late. But eventually we reconciled and really got along really well. But a male who does not have a dad in their lives walks a my mom used to say walks a tight rope, because so many people don't understand, unless you're a male, unless you're a black male, you don't understand what it's like to be a black male. As a female, if they're walking down the street and some guy says something to them, some guy says something to them, or does something evil to them, they're a bunch to me. You're on your own. You expect to take care of it. And so that makes us develop a certain mentality, a tough mentality, a mean mentality, a no caring mentality, because you feel like you're on your own. And so I know I walk the streets. I walk the streets of Chicago, by myself. I walk the streets of Memphis, Tennessee by myself. And so I knew what it was like. I know what it's like when you see one of these young guys walking the street with pants down, looking like he's ready to kill somebody. That is a defense mechanism, because he just may have to do that. You don't know who you're going to run into, and you have nobody to call.
Okay. I definitely can agree with all those sentiments. So then on that same line, right? Because now we're kind of tapping into. So one thing I hate to see dudes with their pants hanging off their butt. Oh my God, that's that's terrible. It's terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now in that same kind of realm, what do you think the role a person's socioeconomic status plays in like how they act and how they conduct themselves and things of that nature?
Let me say something about the pants first of all. Some of the nicest young people I have met were people who were sagging, and it is not indicative. Sagging is not indicative of that everybody who does it is low class or criminal or whatever. For some people, it's just a fad. And I am blessed that my mama allowed me to wear the clothes I wanted to wear. So I was one of those guys, and just in my day, I dressed in pink polka dot suits, green suits, lime green suits, and lime green shoes. So people consider me to be one of those sagging guys. So and I fall guys a little slack until I can get to know that personality a little bit. As far as socioeconomic condition, it's a proven fact that poor people have fewer opportunities than people with money, and opportunities is what your access to opportunity is what's going to determine your future to a great degree. To give you an example, I was talking to a guy one time. We were in business together. He was a rich guy, well-to-do, let me say, and he was casually telling me about his son had walked out of his house one night and had gotten in the car with one of his son's buddies. A deputy sheriff came through and caught them smoking marijuana. The deputy sheriff looked in the friend's trunk and found a pound of marijuana. And the deputy sheriff brought the marijuana to the man's door, left it with him, made his sons come in the house and warned them they better not do it again. That's opportunity. That's access to opportunity. Because let there be a black kid, let there be a black adult, and 9 times out of 10, they're facing serious jail time. And it's just one of the things I'm talking about. Wealthy people have access to better colleges. They have access to better lifestyles. Remember for a long time, black kids were taking the ACT and the other standardized tests and were having a problem with some of the language. And it was not because they were not educated. It was because they had not been exposed to certain things that other kids would have been exposed to just routinely. Like just like going on, just because they would have gone on vacation. They may have gone to Mecca in Egypt, but the average black kid wouldn't have an idea what you're talking about when you say Mecca. So it's unequal opportunity based on wealth and skin color. Because even the super rich, even the rich black people face racism.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that. So for me, on the lines of socioeconomic status, I think basically when you like you said, when you have those, there's those who have, and there's basically those who not don't have, right? So from a wealth standpoint, I feel like growing up in Jackson, you see a lot of kids and adults, of all ages, they tend to start leaning toward different things because of lack of money. The interaction, they turn to gangs and stuff like that. Many people that I knew, they joined gangs because they just felt they wanted I feel like as black people, we always want to feel the need to belong to be a part of something for some
Mhm.
reason. It's just
Yeah.
like
That's
it's
human. That's human nature.
right. It's in our DNA, in our chemical makeup, and you got guys that join the wrong organizations, whether it be gangs or it could even be religious groups. I'm not saying anything's bad, anything is bad about religious group, but sometimes when you're looking, sometimes you had a blind eye when you're so engaged in trying to be a part of something and fit in that you'll basically, in a nutshell, join anything.
Yeah, well, let me say this. Some guys are joining church organizations like Phi Beta Sigma and Alpha Phi Alpha. Let's rescue them. I'm just trying to help the disadvantaged youth.
So you say you're trying to help the disadvantaged you.
Yeah, the misguided. Let me say this, the misguided youth.
The biscuit. Oh, again, if you want to know where I get all this stuff from, look no further than this man that is on the screen. I gotta tell this little little tidbit about me and my dad's relationship too, because I don't want people to think we always been ace boon coon, right? We had a little time we was at each other's throats too, right? So let me tell you what I find, right? Is that so I had a lot of gripes with him when I was a kid, right? About just different stuff, right?
yeah,
And
sure did.
and so I wasn't listening. I wasn't trying to listen to a whole lot of stuff he had to say. Kind of like how he said he did with his dad, right? But it's a different
Yep.
scenario, different dynamic. But there were things that I didn't agree with as a kid that now I look back on. I was like, man, you know what? Got my own kids, got my own family. Now it makes sense. Nobody knows the struggles and the type of stuff a parent has to go through just to be a parent. It's like pretty deep. So, looking back on that and knowing those interactions, I forgive you for whooping me the time you whooped me when I didn't deserve it. I just want you to know you're forgiven. And
Only once. If I had gotten you about 5 more times, you'd have been a much better person. So America is my fault. Okay.
hey, now you just got, let's back up a second. You just got through telling people how proud of me you was in the first segment and all that. Now you saying that I needed more whoopings to turn out better than what I am right now. This is on record too. I need you to know this.
This is after the military. This is ATM after the military.
Oh, you just in here making up acronyms, huh?
Hey, why not?
So on that same token, right? The military. I will say I feel like that's when I grew up really, really fast,
Yeah.
doing that, and I felt like our relationship like really flourished from that because I got to be away, got to be on my own. I had to make sure I took care of the things I need to take care of. I still remember this one of the first time I was well, no, actually this was the third time I was in Iraq. I remember you bought me this Alcorn State University. It was like it's like one of those things you put on a seat, right? For the stadium seat.
Yes.
So
Corporation.
oh yeah, my dad is a graduate of Alcorn State University too. That's why he's doing all that. But I remember I used to have that with me in the truck where every time I would go on mission, I would be sitting on that
Wow.
cushion. And it would make me think about you. It took my
Wow.
mind off where I was at, and I kind of made it my ritual. And then of
Wow.
course, sent me Roman noodles and stuff like that. Well, everybody gets that in Iraq, you know what I'm saying. But
Wow.
I'm saying when it came to you, it was special. I'm not saying everybody gets it in that way. It was special,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was something that I could have, and it always remind me, that hey man, like your parents, they might not physically be here with you, but they're still with you in spirit. That was a really big thing for me.
Well, Buck, let me say this to you. You're laying on pretty thick. The check has already been mailed, okay?
I need to check the address. You know, I moved a couple times. I need to make sure you send it to the right place.
That's not my problem because you moved. If it returns, I'll look into sending it back.
When you send it off?
Yesterday.
Oh man, see, yeah, I can't trust that. Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to check on that. So,
Okay.
what do you think? All right, so now we're talking about HBCUs versus PWI. Do you think you can get the same level of education at a HBCU that you get at a PWI?
Same level. Yes, I do. In certain subjects. In most subjects, I think, because uh, I I'd say I attended Mississippi College for a while, and I attended Ole Miss for a while. My undergraduate degree is from Alcorn State, and then I was in the first class in my high school to integrate. So I've gone to school with white people, and what I have found is that they're not more intelligent. What they have access to are more resources, and resources can make a big difference in your education. But I'm a firm believer that a person's determination is the main determining factor, if I use that word again, as to what they're going to accomplish. I'm reminded of this story about an ant and an elephant were in the middle of a desert right near a river. And 25 years later, the elephant was gone. The river was gone, but the ant was still there. He ate the elephant bit by bit and drank the river dry. Now, it took a long time. So that just means that when you're at a place, as some of our schools are, with fewer access to fewer resources, we just have to work a lot harder. There has to be a lot more emphasis on learning as opposed to wasting time and doing some other things that people with money and access are afforded. So I'm a firm believer you can get the same sociology degree at Alcorn State that you can get at Ole Miss. Now, of course, Alcorn didn't have a law program, so that changes things. I think Jackson State now has an engineering program. Are they going to have the same resources as the engineering program at University of Southern Mississippi or wherever? No. So your degree is going to be a little different, but you can make up for it in guile and determination. You know what I'm saying? It may take a minute to get up to speed, but you can get there.
All right. So I agree. I do agree that you can get the same level of education, but I do but you know, me and you talked about it. For me, it's the resources. You know, I don't care what school you put in the mix. The school that has the resources typically by number or quantity produces the better college graduate in terms of education. Because if you go to, I don't know, we'll use Mississippi State, right? In the Delta. If you take Mississippi State and the Delta's resources and you compare them to a school like Howard or even in fact Harvard, it's going to be vastly different. Now, granted, there's going to be great professors and great instructors at each one of these schools, and a lot of these schools do have that, where they got that one or two professors that they make sure they're invested in the students, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So because they're invested in the student, they're going to do everything they can and make sure that that student strives. But also, I for a short period of time went to HBCU, but graduated from PWI. And like me and you discussed a couple of days ago, the HBCU experience historically is what separates it from the rest of the colleges.
Yes.
And, you know, you're gonna learn a lot about your culture, your history, you know. And I feel like those, not saying that the instructors at the PWIs are not, you know, trying to make sure these students are prepared, but I feel like there's a different level of guidance that you may get at a HBCU. So if if I'm, not on some, not the separators from race, but just in theory, if I'm black and I'm a black professor, right, and you're a black student, right, I know the type of hardships that you're gonna endure if you have not already endured these hardships once you graduate from college, right? So I feel like that's gonna naturally make the instructor gravitate and say, you know what? All right, so this is obviously about learning from an educational standpoint. But how about I give you some tools on life? Because you can take both of those and both of those lessons that are given and apply them, and then hopefully the outcome is you get a productive citizen, who is providing for their family if they have one. They're not going around struggling and things of that nature.
Well, Jesus said that man does not live by bread alone. And so I'm glad you brought in the other facet of an education. It's not just brick and mortar, mortal and professors in the library. There's a social element of it, and education is supposed to help us become better people. As well as learned individuals. And I think it non-traditional HBCUs, sometimes I think that is lacking. Because I've talked to a lot of folk who, spent their entire college years at Ole Miss or Mississippi State or someplace like that, and they usually reveal that they were missing a little something. They felt like they missed college experience to a degree. They miss going to a SWAC game and hollering and screaming and some of the other stuff that happened. I won't say some of the other. We'll just say some other things that happened that don't need to be talked about in this forum.
Some other activities. I got you. We track.
That's good. That's a good word. Some other college activities. We don't want the parents to take the kids out of school.
There's a couple people about to disenroll their kids right now listening to you.
Yeah, some other wholesome college activities.
Hey, here's another thought I had when I was listening to you talk about your father, right? Do you feel like not having your father for that time frame actually in a way catapulted you to have your drive that you got?
I think that may have been it. It's hard to quantitate what you didn't have. I tend to try to measure what I did have, because and so that might have been the case. I mean, who knows? My dad I might have been lazy as a biscuit book. I don't know, but I kind of doubt it, because he was an active man, and he was doing some very important things in the community. I noticed my life would have been different. In what ways, I don't know. He might have been a terrible dad once I got a little older. I don't know. But I do know that my brother, my sister, and my brother and I ran off a bunch of stepdads. my mom.
Oh my God.
My mom tried to date. Some joker came in the house one time, man. She said, "This Mr. Earl." And we looked and said, "What is this dude doing here?" So he started eating. He was saying, "Hello, children." Look, we had a meeting. We went outside and had a meeting. He is not going to be our stepdaddy. So when the man went to work, when he came back, my mom had cooked some beans. Man, we took a big box of salt and put in the beans. And Mr. Earl had high blood pressure. So he had a big scoop of those beans, and it was a while before it hit him. He was trying to be nice, and because Mama could really cook. He was looking at his ass started budging out. So we knew it was working, so he left and didn't come back. So we had some things for stepdaddies, man. It got to the point nobody wanted to be our stepfather. We got the word out. And if Mama brought a man home, she would say, "See them children right there, those three. You watch them now." She said, they low down. You need to watch them.
Not low down.
She called us low down. We were.
That must be one of them growing up in the Delta type things. You just different upbringing. Speaking of that, what was I always wanted to get your perspective on this. So what was it like growing up, like during the civil rights movement era?
Well, if ironically you asked that, my mother was a civil rights worker, and she was about, I think I was about 14 when she got started, when they formed the first civil rights organization in Rosedale, Mississippi, and they had a protest march in the black about it, the police allowed them to march about a block in the black community, and about a week later, all of the folks who organized the protest were gone. They had left town because the cops had told them either leave town or we'll find a place to bury you. So then some other folk got together, and and Martin Luther King came to the forefront. And my mother, as I told you, she was fearless. So she helped to form a second civil rights organization. But they did most of their protesting out of town, and my mother would be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time. But before she left, she would tell us where she was going, and she would tell us if she was not back within a certain length of time, to whose house to go to, and ask them to help us with food or whatever. And that was just common for the civil rights workers. Now I was 16 when Dr. Martin Luther King got killed, and that was a traumatic time. I want you to imagine a small town in which you hear once we lived across the railroad track, when you hear like 400 people screaming and hollering at one time, man, and just walking around in the dark saying, "Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, oh my Lord." It was a crucial time, and it was a really sad time. And it made a lot of us become more serious about, civil rights and what we were trying to do. So I ended up boycotting one of the businesses in Rosedale myself. And
Yeah,
I was one of the few young people that did it. But when my mom asked me to wear a sign and protest, I asked her, said, "Why?" She said, "Because it's your freedom we're fighting for too. So you're going to get something out of this. So go in and put some skin in the game." And a lot of my classmates, we had integrated at that time, and a lot of my white classmates wanted to know what I was doing. They would stop and pause. "McCoy, what are you doing?" And I had a lot of conversation about racism and white privilege and that kind of thing with them. I told them some things they didn't realize. They didn't realize that how poor we were. They said they didn't. They had never gone into our part of town. Many of my white classmates said they thought we lived like they did, just in a different part of town. And so I managed to, educate a few, hopefully.
yeah. I always say, like, I'm thankful that I wasn't born during that time frame, because I just don't know how I would have fared in that time frame, that type of era.
Yeah.
But what I find always strange and kind of troubling is, so we had um people like then, like obviously my grandmother, you, and other people, different civil rights activists throughout the years, who fought for our freedom and the liberties we do have. And yet it feels like to me sometimes the black people are the people that are always against each other. Like I told somebody this one time, when I was in the military, it wasn't white people that I had an issue with. It was other black people, because for some reason we have this mentality that we, let's say a crab in a bucket, like we just have to bring each other down. You get a lot of nationalities come from other places, and when they come here to the United States, they all make sure they do everything they can to take care of each other and for them to build themselves up, right? But for some reason, and it's not everybody obviously, but for some reason, some of the people I've encountered in my life, we just don't do it for each other. And it's troubling. I know I told you earlier I had a concept, and it probably just my thoughts, probably not true, but I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that back then during slavery and that time, black people would be forced to go against each other in order to survive. If I tell you I need some information, and if you don't tell me, I'm gonna, you know, hang your child or hang your wife or something like that, right? And it's information about another slave, then most people will probably agree. When it's about your family, you're probably gonna give up that information.
Well, for me, that I think that's a very valid. I think it's more of a fact than a theory. But I also have a theory. You're keep in mind when black people were brought from Africa, we were brought from so many different tribes, and a lot of the tribes were warring tribes that didn't get along with each other, didn't like each other, had hatred for each other, and then all of a sudden the slaves get to America, and I'm from some tribe that does not like Nigerians, but they're going to force me to marry a Nigerian woman. And we might have had some warring going on. My family, slaves that who were from my tribe were probably always messing with her, and vice versa. I think some of that hate and envy come from us being intermingled so vigorously. And the other thing is, I think it's the system. I think the system is designed to divide and conquer. I think the powerful even started even during the Revolutionary War and after. Was the rich was always trying to stay rich and powerful. And how do you do that? You make sure that the lower classes are at war against each other. So right now, man, even if we were getting along, they would throw something out there. And so many times it's so simple. All Trump had to do was say, hey, they're rapists out there. The Mexicans are rapists. Guess what, man? There's an element of folk who say, oh, yeah. And blacks are this. They try to, and so, I think in our community, we've also got race betas. And all they got to do is say, I'm protecting you from the white people, white folk. They want to take your Social Security. They want to sick the police on you. So I think that by and large, as black folk, we're reactionary people. We tend to not set agendas. We tend to react to everybody else's agenda. And since we do, I think it makes us easy targets. Look at the guns that were dropped in our community. Assault rifles, back in the day. We didn't know what an assault rifle was, but all of a sudden the gangs had them. So one gang gets them, another gang got to get them. They weren't put there by the gangs initially. They were put there by the powers that be. Mm-hmm. Drugs, cocaine. Probably might have been 2 black people in the nation that had a ship, had a plane, and they had not been to Colombia. But drugs were here, particularly cocaine. And so I just think besides all of the extra stuff, the media manipulation and all the other stuff that's going on, there are also some physical things that I think they do to keep us at odds. Because as long as the poor is busy, poor in the middle class is busy opposing each other, then nobody bothers them. So that's my theory.
All right. So you kind of tapped on it a little bit. Well, what are your thoughts on politics? I'm sure that's going to be interesting because I have some interesting thoughts on politics too. Because you started to mention, you were talking about Trump and the kind of propaganda he used to get elected.
I think that there's always been a section of people in this country who claim to care about democracy until they didn't like the results of that democracy. And so now the cat is out of the bag. When black folks were screaming saying this system is unfair, it's not one man, one vote for us. You discriminated against us. We can't elect our leaders because of gerrymandering and all the other tricks they pull. They said, oh, but it's one man, one vote, and you have to, in America, in a democracy, you have to accept the results. Except we finally found a man who didn't accept the results and found 40% of the country that went along with him. So we found, the big lie is over now. They can't sell us democracy in the history books and say it's a be all to end all. Now we know. So and there's a certain percentage of white people who've always wanted to keep this nation white. and they wouldn't raise a whole lot of hell as long as it was going their way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as one man, one vote. I'm for democracy. I love liberty. Until it looked like they were going to be in the minority some kind of way. It was going to lose control of power. And all of a sudden, as minorities gain more strength, that element that some of them are racist. I think many of them are racist. I think some of them are just power hungry. That element is rearing its head now. And Trump gave them a platform. Trump is not the problem. Trump is a symptom of the problem. And so I think this was going on. You know, the demographers found out that I think in 2030, white people are going to be in the minority. And they knew that long before we did. And they're reacting to it. They're not having children anymore, as many children. More Hispanics are coming. And they begin to say, wait a minute, do we want to be a minority here in this country? They wanted everybody else to be. It was all right. It was the Democratic way. But when their time seemed to be coming, and they're reacting to it, man. And many of them were reacting with violence.
So politics for me, I don't like politics in general. Just because of all the things that come along with it. You know, I've seen firsthand how, you know, when people want to stay in power, they want to put a certain person in power, like the links and the depths they'll go to ensure that happens, right? You know, and a lot of it is sad. You know, I don't, necessarily agree with that, or even like from this aspect. So a lot of black people that I know, I wouldn't even say they're in my circle, but just I know acquaintances, right? They think that just because a person is a Democrat or whatever, right? Let's say we're gonna stay on the Democrat side. That just because a person is a Democrat, you're gonna go ahead and vote for the Democrat, which to me makes no sense. Because most people, I would think, well, this is my thinking. I'm gonna vote for the person who I think will do the best job, period. But I'm also gonna vote for the person who embodies some of the interests that I have for me and my family and our way of life and that type of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not always necessarily, gonna be a Democrat. It could be, it could be a Republican. You just don't know. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is people don't realize too is I think they put all these expectations on, like, let's say, like the president, right? The president is one person. He is not the be all end all for the whole United States of America. It's certain channels that things had to go through to get passed and stuff like that. And we're in an era where you want change like right now to happen right now. And unfortunately, life does not work that way at all. Sometimes there have to be sacrifices and certain instances that happen in order to get to that change. What do you think about policing or your views on it? Obviously, being a former police officer, what are your views on policing in like the last 25 years?
Well, I haven't done an extensive study, but I have been familiar with police officers, particularly up close and personal, since I was about 15. Because in my hometown, they used to harass us. There were no black police officers. And the white police officers used to harass us, and they beat up a lot of guys, and they never hit me because that was going to be a serious problem. But they threatened me, from time to time, and I just realized how unfair things were. But I was also disappointed in a lot of my guys I hung out with, in that they were so tough when we were talking or whatever as a group. But then as soon as the cops got them, they let the cops do anything to them. So I was disappointed in that regard. Now, as I got older, I remember I told you I spent summers in Memphis and Chicago. I got harassed by the police. And it was so common until, I don't know if the term harassment was even available then. I never heard anybody say, I got harassed by the police. If the police stopped you and drew guns down on you, that was just par for the course. It was not until I think black police officers beginning to join police forces probably in the 70s, where integration was going to full bloom, that we began to see a different kind of policing to a degree. But I can tell you this from a police officer perspective. First of all, I want to say this. I want to warn people out there. The time to have a disagreement with a police officer is not out on a country road somewhere. It's not even on the street. The time, what you do with a police officer, if you don't like what has happened, then you call the Internal Affairs Division, or you call the police chief, or you write them. So many of us want to have a disagreement with the cops out on the streets somewhere during a traffic stop or whatever, and that gives the average cop probable cause to arrest you. So just avoid those kind of incidents. But what I have found, I'll give you an inside scoop. If you walk into a precinct, an integrated precinct with blacks, whites, women, and perhaps a Hispanic or two, people are going to be segregated in them. People think, oh, like on TV, everybody's sitting right together. No, you got a section over there are going to be a certain number of black guys. A section in the back, a certain number of white guys. White guys and white women would sit together. You have a certain section with black women. The 2 or 3 of them is there. Then you have another section of black guys. 2 sections of black guys. And what happens is some cops are dirty. And you know it as a police officer. So you let them run their business. You don't want to sit with them. You don't want to be in that group because you might hear something you haven't been hearing. See what I'm saying? So they take care of their business. The only time you see them during the patrol is if you have to come to their aid for something. But you try to stay away. They take care of each other. Then you got another group of decent guys, really decent cops. They don't get the publicity, but the majority of the cops, man, are good people. But and they're going to be in this area, and that's where you sit and you talk and you plan whatever you're going to do for the night. And then the women, hang out. But there's always a group of renegade white guys, but they kind of mess with the regular white guys. So they're renegades on the police department. And they're nice guys. Police departments are a reflection of society. If you walk in any room with 60 people, you got all kind there. And because somebody puts on a uniform, does not change their character by and large. I've seen some guys who were scary in society. They joined the police department. They became bullies because they had their uniform. It'll just give you the opportunity to reveal who you are because you got the authority. Decent guys in one place are generally decent guys in another place. So you can look at the personality and kind of determine what kind of cop the person is going to be. You'd be the same kind of cop you are now as a person. Thoughtful, brave, logical. Because that's you. And you try to find a partner that's a lot like you. That way it's an easy night, man. A day. Y'all not looking for anything. Y'all treating folks with respect, but you're not getting it. Some stuff comes up. They know you're a rough rider. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, then that, it's cool.
So I think from my perspective, obviously there's a lot of different things that happen in the last 25 years. A lot of things, because of social media, come to the light, stuff like that. I think because we do live in an era where we have social media, there are things that we get to see firsthand that were already happening, just nobody's recording them. Mm-hmm. Like, police brutality and the, young black men and women or older black men and women being victims of police brutality to a great degree, right?
Yeah.
We did I'm gonna let these people remain nameless, but there are some police officers I know, right, that I had a conversation with a while back, right? And one of the things that they said that kind of bothered me was they don't have scheduled mental evaluations, to check on their psyche. What they pretty much do is they just police each other. So, when the person said it, I'm saying to myself, well, okay, so y'all police each other, but you don't have anything in place to ensure that, your mental health is good. You know, they said the only real time they get mentally evaluated is going through the academy or if they're involved in a shooting. Then
That's
that's
correct.
obviously like necessary. But on a day-to-day basis, there's nothing scheduled. And I started thinking, like, I just imagine like how much crazy stuff probably goes on, you know, that a police officer sees that they get no mental evaluation for at all. You know, in this day and age, you get PTSD from everything. It's not just combat, it's not just being in the military. Like anybody can have PTSD. But the fact that they're not the police department is not putting forth the effort to make sure, these men and women that they put on the streets or that their mental health is good, that's kind of alarming. You know,
Yeah.
it makes me kind of dig into, well, I wonder what the psych evaluation is, because that's how even in the military you have racist groups like the KKK and all that type of stuff. They infiltrate the military that get that training, and then they
They
get
told us
out.
that.
Yeah, and they get right. They go back. They train the other guys or people that where they from, and then now you just basically you made a new army, but in the form of what we would call Americans.
Yeah. Did you all have regular psych evaluation in the military?
Say, did we have regular psych evaluation in the military? No,
Mm. Okay.
not scheduled. Again, it's the same type deal. You go
Okay.
with. So one, you had to ask for it. Unless something already happened, a trigger where they feel like you got to go see, a mental health professional. But other than that, same thing. It's just, policing your battle buddy up, checking on each other and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
like regardless of that, there's some stuff that I'm just not gonna tell anybody as a person, right? Because we got this big stigma that's attached to mental health,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Black community, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, oh no, mental health is not a real, it's not a real thing. And we also talked about, you know like when you take the kids of this generation, right, the first thing they want to do when they experience some grief or a problem, the first thing they want to say is, oh, I want to kill myself, or they want to kill themselves, right?
I'll kill
um
somebody else.
or kill somebody else. And I'm not saying that those thoughts are not valid, but I feel like the way we were brought up, um mental health was kind of like a dispel thing, right? So it's a pro and a con, right? Because it's a dispel thing. All that doesn't really exist. Don't cry, you'll be all right. But then it was good for childhood, but then you grow up as an adult, and like you said, you basically been told this whole time, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to internalize your feelings. And that's where you get a lot of these crazy adults, because as a child they didn't learn. I'm not lying. As a
It's
child,
true. It's true.
nobody has taught them how to internalize or rationalize their feelings, or how to express them in a positive way. And we're not told to go get help. On top of that, getting help is like, oh no, don't do that, because now you got this other stigma on you, because nobody wants to feel like, oh, well, you know what, my friend is crazy or my husband crazy or whatever the case may be. Like, that's just it's a bad thing. So we're gonna get into this part of the show. A lot of you probably don't know, but when I was a senior in high school, my sister Robin was killed in a car accident as a result of a high speed police pursuit, right? And it's something that me and my dad, we kind of go back and forth talking about it, around this time of year and throughout the year, because my sister's birthday would have been on October 31st. Obviously on Halloween. Um, but can you speak to the situation and what happened, Dad, and kind of let them know, what happened as a result of that?
Uh, Robin was 18, and she and my 14-year-old niece were killed in a police chase. And when they were killed, the first thing that the police who were chasing them claimed is that Robin had stolen a car, and was driving something. I knew that it had to be a lie. So as we checked into the facts, we found that Mississippi was the deadliest state in the United States for deaths and injuries involving police chase. So while we were trying to heal, uh, we formed an organization called Victims of Police Pursuits, because we wanted to curb some of the deaths, and particularly the deaths and damage done from police chases. So we went around. My wife and I went around the state and and interviewed and offered aid to the people who family members had been killed in police chases. And we managed we lobbied the state legislature for 5 years. And we managed to get them to pass a police pursuit bill. However, they refused to name it after Robin. We want to call it Robin's Law, but they refused to name it that. And it did not include many of the safeguards that we wanted to put in the bill. But at least they got something passed. And police pursuit, it did curb police pursuits in the state for a little while. Also, they began to creep back up.
For me, obviously, it was a different, difficult time. And, obviously we talk about it like around this time each year, but I still remember like it was yesterday when it happened. I remember it was a girl I was dating in high school. She called me because she had saw it on the news, right? And she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, she's like, you got a sister named Robin, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And she reached out to me and she told me what's going on. I remember I called you and I asked, right? Because I didn't know what was going on. And I just remember you getting like real quiet, on the phone when I asked. And I was like, "Oh yeah," and then you confirmed that it happened. So for me, every moving forward, and then I mean, it's still rough, but it gets better with time. That for a long time I wouldn't even celebrate Halloween at all. I wouldn't take my kids trick or treating, nothing like that. You know, but over time it's developed, getting a little bit better, easier to talk about. At first it wouldn't be something that I would actually discuss at all, but over time, like I said, it's getting better. But give me two things that you're really proud of.
Well, I'm proud of my relationship with God. I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud of my children and my family. I have been blessed in that each one of my children has a generosity about them that I really appreciate, and a sensitivity. And I just think in this world, no matter how tough things are and how cold this world can get, a person has to try to be a human being. And I think that although it hurts being sensitive to other people's needs, I think it's an essential part of being a human being. It's like some folks say, "Well, I'm not going to love anybody because I don't want to be hurt." Well, no pain, no gain. So I think love is like that, I'm proud that you all have a brave, but you have a certain amount of humanity about you and sensitivity that I really appreciate. So I happen to not only love my children, but I like my children. Although no tests have been done yet.
Hey, we already determined that we right after this.
Hey, look, no problem. Can you have somebody to swab and get? I do that myself.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have them do it, and it's gonna get sent out ASAP.
Okay, so I'm not buying that.
Look, I want putting 2-day shipping on it. I want it back. Look, by Wednesday, I want to know.
And you know what? You'll be sued for back child support and everything else by Thursday.
So for me, the two things I would say I'm most proud of is definitely got to be my children, right? If I don't say this, I'm gonna get beat up. You know what I'm saying? The rest of my kids gonna be jealous when I say it. But I want to shout out to my daughter Isabella because she told me before I got on this show today.
Oh boy.
I had to make sure I give her a shout out. So hey, look, I
Oh
love you,
boy.
boo. and then the other thing I would say is I would say getting a college degree. I think all through school I never really had it on my radar as a thing that I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just so set on doing it. But it's also one of those things that nobody can ever take from you, and then I'm just really proud of it. So before we get out of here, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before we go?
I just want to say thank you again for allowing me to be on your program, and I hope the listeners got some information that they could use along the way. And so, it's been informative to me. And again, I appreciate you and love you, man.
Love you too, Dad. It still feel weird. I can't, I'm from that era where you don't call your parents by their first name. So I ain't gonna lie. When I was
No,
introduced,
call me by no first name.
hey, it felt kind of weird.
What felt kind of weird? Saying Larry?
I felt like, I don't know, like somebody was behind me.
Yeah, because you don't know me that well.
Belt or something.
Yeah. Just call me Mr. McCoy, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I also want to give a shout out to Curtis and Fedora. If you guys, they had an awesome show yesterday, very informative. If you guys have not checked them out, please check them out at Suite 915. It airs every Sunday at 4:00 p.m. Mountain Time. Definitely check them out because they have great content, and I can't thank them enough for what they're doing for the city of El Paso and his residents. For me, what I want to leave you all with is, I think a lot of times we don't cherish like the time we have. And this is something me and my dad talked about. Anytime I get upset or something about something, or I complain about something, I think about the fact that my sister didn't get to experience any of this, didn't get a chance to be a mother or a wife, didn't get a chance to be the age I am now. So, just be appreciative for your time. Kobe Bryant said the biggest mistake that people make is thinking that we have more time. And you just don't know how much time you have. But I want you guys to tune in the same time, October 17th, and we're going to be having a special show about voting, something I think we all can gain something from. Again, I hope the echo my father's sentiment. I hope you guys got something from it. It was informative. I hope you find, some peace in what we said. But until then, until next time, El Paso, it's been real.
Aloha.